And we are
We're
live.
here. Oh, are we on?
We are on with
I'm rocking to that
I
music.
thought we did the show already in the last 20 minutes.
You know, I love the behind the scenes chat of all the shows out there. Like, I wish we could record those and just put them out there. Because
Oh, no, we don't. No, we don't.
bad idea.
Maybe a reputation to abide by, Mr. Woods.
Well,
Bad idea.
this is true. We do have our reputations, but all right, let's get to this amazing chat that is out there. And I know I saw some great people. Tina, who is a growing comic book collector whose collection keeps growing every time I see her. Our buddy from the great land up north, Steve White.
Steve.
And Chuck Hensley from North Carolina, which isn't the land up north, but still has the word north in it. All right. So we have Chuck in here. Who's this guy? Can somebody, Blue Wrench, can somebody ban Matt Woods? We got to get him out of here. Okay. Oh, Dave Bratton. It is really good to see you.
Dave.
As Joe always says, the better looking of the Bratton Bros.
I don't know what I say.
And Sheila, I've never seen you in the chat. Great to see you. Let's see. Take care of some people. But anyhow, so got some great guests here. And we have a great conversation that we're going to have about why do people collect comic books, but specifically, why do adults collect comic books? And we have Psychedelic, who came in. Good to see you, Paul. But so anyhow, we have some questions here. Okay, we have some questions of some great guys in the panel, and everybody knows Anachronic Comics and also Mark Andrews. You know, two amazing people. And we might have somebody else pop in a little bit later. We'll see how that goes. But these are very successful people, okay? I picked both Mark and Joe because they're retired, okay? So they're not the stereotypical comic book collector, okay? Wait a second. Go.
This color.
That face again. Where are you at? Flip you over here. Make that face? Yes. And Mark, also distinguished.
See?
Me? Yeah, I don't think I have a whole lot of gray yet. Okay, give it a little bit of time. All right. But anyhow, so Joe, I'm going to ask some questions here. Okay.
Okay.
We're going to start this off with the easy ones. Okay.
Okay.
What got you started way back in the day whenever you were beginning your comic book hobby?
Well, Matt, I refuse to answer on the advice of counsel in that my response may incriminate me.
Wait, you're your own counsel.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So I'm allowing myself to answer that question. So I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question, please?
What got you started way back in the day with your comic book collecting hobby?
You know, that's kind of an interesting question. People have asked me that before. I'm not sure that I fully remember, but based on my memory, I think I just kind of happenstanced on it. I was a big fan of the Superman TV show with George Reeves playing Superman. I mean, I love Superman.
It's a great
and I believe that my father used to take me to a barbershop on 6th Avenue near Bleecker Street. And I remember two things about that barbershop, you know, about waiting for my turn or for my father to finish. There was a table with certain magazines on there. A prominent one was, I think, Playboy magazine that was on there. I was not allowed to take that, but there were comic books there too. And I believe that was my first.
How old were you?
Excuse me?
How old were you?
Oh, maybe 6 or 7 or whatever, you know, 8, whatever.
God bless you.
And so, not that even if I picked up the Playboy, I would understand what was going on, but I picked up the comic books. Now, I did not start buying comic books at that time, but I had looked forward to getting my hair cut every 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever, because I would pick up a comic book. And then by my school, there was one of these, we used to call them candy stores. You know, they sold newspapers, magazines. They had a little kind of what do you call it? Like a little soda bar, you know, where the guy would make egg creams and other things like that. And he had candy, but he also had a few racks of comic books. And I went in there and I saw the comics were there. There were 10 sets apiece. And not that I had a lot of money, but if I had some money from my aunt or whatever to give it to me, I would save it and go over there and pick up a comic book or two. And I believe that's how I began. And I'm kind of a hoarder. So even though at that point I wasn't thinking that I was collecting or saving or anything like that, I would keep them on a makeshift bookcase underneath my windowsill, just stacked up when I bought them. And so I based on my recollection, to the best of my recollection, that's the history and how I first got to see a comic book and then get to actually buy and keep comic books.
Comic books to you seem like regular books to me. Whenever I was a kid, I was always reading a book and I would buy them. Sometimes my library would be selling them for, honestly, cents. Okay, maybe a quarter, whatever.
Right.
I never threw books away. So I always was collecting books. And what's the difference between a regular, hardbound book and a comic book? They're both literature. They're both reading. So you started doing it kind of just like I did with my book collection.
Well, the books that I started reading mostly in high school, you had to read books for school, obviously. But I really got into the James Bond books. And then when as we went along with it, I mentioned this the other night with Gary. I started getting into the Doc Savage paperbacks that were reprints from the 1930s pulp magazines. And so I used to read those two things all the time, besides whatever I had to read.
Yes. But we all had those great, books we had to read in high school. But Mark, so, what got you into collecting comic books whenever you first started buying them?
Similar to Joe, I fell into it. Interesting, the haircutting thing, because there was a comic books that was in my grandmother's basement where we used to go to get our haircut. My dad would buzz our hair, and it looked a lot like yours does, Matt. Anyway, so I enjoyed those. But I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So as they had books that I just kind of would adopt, and I never threw away anything. Like I same thing. Like you didn't throw away books. You didn't dispose of books.
Like the order down there, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, the good thing is, like, we didn't know that we were hoarders until TV came along and told us. Anyway, because it's organized. Like, it's organized. But
stacks.
And it's in stacks and things. But I had a paper route from like a really early age, because it was also, it was passed down from my older siblings to me, and I had disposable income, and I worked on the farms, and I worked in stores, and I always had a little bit of cash, and I'd go to the spinner rack and I'd buy the odd book, and you never got rid of them, and especially with the spinner rack books, because you sometimes didn't get the full story, like, because you missed an issue because you didn't get there in time to get that issue. So
that was the worst. Yeah,
that was the worst. It was, it was like
you couldn't find them anywhere then.
No, there was no LCS. There was no. You could go in Marvel. They had a back issues page that you could send away for so much money, and I never, I was a kid and I never thought about doing that. But so you kept them, and Joe talked about this, trading with buddies. If have you got that? I don't have that issue. Can I?
Right.
Get that one for me to read, or what are you going to do with those? And the other really interesting thing that for some of the comics that I acquired, I was in Boy Scouts like forever, and we used to do paper drives.
Yeah.
And you did that, Joe? Like, gathering up
No.
newspaper.
No,
We did paper drives to raise money.
I made it to second class, and then I went to military high school, so that was the end of Boy Scouts.
Yeah, see, I avoided our ROTC, which was okay with me. Anyway, the paper drives was another amazing little area for us, who like comic books, because people would bundle up all their newspapers and anything paper and magazines, and occasionally there'd be some comics in there that you would, you'd be sorting out the magazines because time went here, life went there because they're heavier. Ooh, comic. And you'd tuck that over there. And, so it just, I fell into it and I just kept them. And what, if you could see around me currently, is still those books from those days are in these bins around me.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get back to, we have some new people in the chat haven't acknowledged in a little bit. Where's he at? Oh, there, we got Paul. We got Steve. I know. Oh, here he is. Saw Gary B in here. It's always good to see people. If I've missed anyone, I think I said hi to Paul Psychedelic, Steve White, but just want to make sure we're keeping up on that. But no, Mark, you hit on something very big, okay, of how you were going to become a collector, or not that. When you realize you're not just starting to read comics, but actually becoming a collector. Joe, when did you start to realize that you weren't just reading comics? You were doing something different. You were becoming a collector.
I think it was discovering a couple of different comic books.
Here's our guy, Trev, in the chat. Good to see you.
One was the Justice League of America. When that came out, I was just enamored, and much of my collection that I kept, the comics my mom let me keep, have to do with multiple heroes. And the Justice League of America was one that really caught my fancy. And I kept on collecting. Even now I've been collecting it, although, for other reasons I kind of stopped some of that. But that volume 1, I have pretty much almost all of them, because I've been trying to fill in the blanks. There was that and Marvel.
Ooh. That's what I'm talking about.
I feel like I was there at the beginning,
Yeah.
And I mean, Fantastic Four was amazing. X-Men was amazing. Avengers was like the Justice League. And when I got to Spider-Man, those are the ones I was going to buy. I mean, I would buy Superman and some of the others as well, but those 4 of 5, counting the Justice League, were the ones that I tried to get every month, and I was pretty successful once I got it in my head to do it, to get them every month, until I stopped collecting at a point in time.
About how old were you when you were trying to get all of these?
I'm sorry?
About how old were you when you were actively trying to go for getting all these?
I'd say I was probably 11, 10, 11, 12. So, I'd say 10 or 11.
See, that's a pretty young age to make that realization that you're actively trying to get them. I'm impressed.
I didn't have the money, but like I said, there was this woman who was a family friend that was, my grandmother, grandfather, they all were in Italy. Some of them passed away, when I was still here, but she was kind of my surrogate grandmother. And so anytime I went over her house, she would roll up pennies in paper and she'd give me 25 cents. So I'd save on that. So anytime I got any kind of money, from my parents would give me, maybe my father would give me a quarter or something like that. That was my comic book money. I had there was nothing else other than buying a Spalding, if you know what that was, once in a while, which was 25 cents, so we could play stoop ball and kick, all this other type of stuff. Besides that, and baseball cards was another thing that I used to get. Comic books was the other thing. And so that's where my money went as a kid.
And I think Steve White says it here perfect. They hook you, okay? They're like soap operas. They leave you hanging
not in those days, but not in those days, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, not as much as now.
The most part,
they were not as they were capsulized. Like there was one-shot stories.
Yeah.
When the Justice Society came in, around issue, whatever it was, 20, 21, something like that. That was the start of it for me, because Justice League was published 8 times a year. DC had this thing where they published either bi-monthly, 6 times a year, or monthly, 12 times a year. But there was some comic books that were published only 8 times a year. They were published 2 months, skip a month, 2 months, skip a month, etc. And Justice League was one of them in those days. And when the Justice Society came in for the first team up that they had, it was during the summer months, if I remember correctly. And it was the 2 issues that were concurrent, for the 2 months it was published. And I'd be dying for the next issue to come out. But other than that, in the early 60s, at least, and even later on, I mean, there wasn't too much continuity there. There might be a few, but not really that much that was there. They were all self-contained stories, running anywhere in between, like close to 30 pages, basically, with respect to that.
That's why I got into like the Marvel team up. That was one of my first really go-to series that I wanted to get, is because each one was one story. You got to see multiple heroes. Though, as you got older, you went, okay, they're going to have a fight, and then they're going to have a misunderstanding. And then anyway, you figured out the storyline. But when you're buying off the spinner rack, Joe, if you missed one of those books, it wasn't the end of the world, because it wasn't tied to another story.
That's right.
And I think that's why I got into those ones, just like you did with, and yeah, I don't know. I probably didn't get into DC for whatever reason. We had like one store in town where I grew up that had comic books, and the owner didn't get in a lot of DC books.
Yeah.
He got in Marvel. And I don't know if that was his choice or whether it was,
whether it was a distributor or if it was
or what. But
I've mentioned this before, but other than maybe getting a comic book from a buddy, they did have used bookstores back then.
Yep.
Now you might still find one here and there, but not the same. You had these small kind of solo proprietors, and there was one around the block. And I mentioned this more than once, where I would go in there. He would buy books from people for 2 cents and sell them for 5. And occasionally, because I was very a good customer, he would let me go into the free bin and pick one. And some of those free ones had the trade dress cut off, like they used to do, instead of sending it back. Others had writing on them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I was able to go there and pick up some comics, not in the greatest of shape, obviously, but neither were mine. Pick up some of those comics that I might have missed. But it was hard to find those. But I'd go there like every week or 2 weeks and go through that, that comic book box that he had, trying to find something that I might have missed for 5 cents instead of 10 or 12.
But hey, I want to say hello before the chat gets past. But welcome, Madam Blaster, and my favorite troll in the world. Where you at? Jackson Roykirk. Okay. Yeah, he's the only guy that gets an entire write-up or whatever, poster. So, but hey, Mark. So, and you did kind of talk about it whenever you were a hoarder, okay, and you started to get them, which honestly, that's perfect. I'm glad you said that because, well, deep down, I think we're all hoarders, okay? You just call it out like it is.
Well, yeah, but I admit it. Like,
yeah. But when did you make that transition? Like, all right, you got a lot of books, you're getting a pile, you got to stack them. Like, mom's telling you got to throw them out, Joe. That still breaks my heart that you had to get rid of 2/3 of your collection. Okay. But when did you know you were a comic book collector and full bore, there was no debate about it anymore?
When I was finished, I was halfway through high school. I went, yeah, okay. I'm a collector. Particularly of comic books. I was a collector of many things before that. Right. I still have them, because I don't get rid of anything. I have every Hardy Boy book.
Nice.
No, no, I didn't get that one, but there was some of the other ones, but I like to get, I realized that I was a bit of a completionist because I like to get full series of stuff.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, comic books feed that. There's a reason why they put numbers on them for issue numbers, issue 1, 2, 3. It's, you know, and when there's a gap there, you want to fill that gap and find out what that story was. So what really like, okay, what am I going to do here is when I left home to go off to school at 18, and then I got my first full-time job at 21, right out of college.
Nice.
I had to move. And what was I gonna do with all this stuff? And luckily I was the last kid, and we lived in a huge house that my parents lived in. My dad built it. They lived in it until they passed away. So I had this kind of a handy dandy, you know, my bedroom was still my bedroom when I was like 45 years old, which is kind of handy.
Of being the youngest child.
That's the beauty of being the youngest child. So I had, I was enabled, I guess, by my parents that instead, Joe, I wish that you'd have had that experience instead of what I did.
I lived in an apartment, small room.
Yeah. And so, you know, I was able to maintain this, and I don't know what would have happened if I couldn't have.
Yeah.
Like,
and I just want to tell you one thing, Mark. I also had the Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman Aurora kits that I put together.
oh yeah. See, those were awesome. And
I wish I had.
Then my older siblings had kids, and my mother gave them those models to play with.
You can't play with
those. What are you doing?
You can't play with those.
Yeah, those are collectibles. But so Chuck has a great question here. Do you have the Hardy Boys comic books?
I do have a couple of the Dell ones, yeah.
Oh,
not all of them. But I do have the Hardy Boys Detective Handbook.
They had a handbook?
Yeah, Detective Handbook.
I'm still upset you didn't collect the Nancy Drew too, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Well, you can't collect everything, Matt.
You can't collect everything. Now, my library, they had a full stack of all the Hardy Boys and all the Nancy Drew, you know, mystery novels. And I just remember I was in, you know, elementary, second, third grade. I'd go through all those in the public library.
Well, I envied you, Joe, the fact that you lived in a city so that you could like go down the block to these different places. Like I lived in a small town of like 400 people, most of who were related to me. We had like one store that sold, we had one gas station, one grocery store, and the next bigger town was like, 18 miles away, which you could do that by bicycle, but boy, you got in hot water when you got home from your mom when you did that. So like you couldn't, you just couldn't wander down the street and pick something up, which would have been awesome, which would have probably got me in more trouble.
Right.
But now being in a town definitely is an advantage, Joe. But at the same time, Mark, he did live in an apartment, so he couldn't keep all those comic books. So there's a trade-off for everything. But no, the Nancy Drew books were not in pink. Thank you very much, Steve.
They were yellow.
Yes, they were. And weren't Hardy Boys in blue?
Yep.
See, it's all coming back. But Joe, have you ever paused in your comic book collecting? Did you ever take a break for whatever reason?
Oh, sure. Roughly around 1973, I think. Well, I was in college. I still collected, though not as extreme, I guess I would say. But I still was collecting, a number of books. I even probably expanded out a little bit, like when DC came out with The Shadow for, I think it was a 12-issue run or something like that. I make sure I picked that up because I liked The Shadow. And there were some others, some of the Kirby stuff that came out when he moved over to DC. I have a bunch of that, which I'll have an episode on at some point in time. As part of the comics that my mom let me keep, but I'd say probably around 73-ish or so.
Okay.
I mean, I graduated college in 72, So sometime after graduation into 1973, when I started working and all of that, your life changes, and some of your perspective changes, and it wasn't as important to me anymore. My life broadened. I was traveling to work, I had new friends. I was going out more, with people and so forth. And so up until maybe 2006, 7, 8, I forget the exact year, I basically didn't collect any comics, except that my friend John, who I bought those comics from for 2 cents a piece that I'm showing off now on my channel, he would occasionally buy a comic, and he bought treasuries,
the big ones,
sometime during then. And
Love
he would,
those.
because this is especially while we were still in school and all that, when I was kind of toning down and not really buying a lot, during the late 60s, early 70s, he was still buying, and and even into the 70s, he would buy stuff and give it to me. Because
we all need friends like that.
Yeah, you better give him a birthday card every year.
Yeah. So some of the treasuries I have, I got from him.
Nice.
Nice.
Hey, I want to say hi to a first-time viewer. Welcome to the channel, Rudy.
Hey, Rudy.
And you know what? I need to get Chewy back in the room, okay? Because Steve White's reminded me to hit, Chewy smash the button. In fact, Chewy's right behind that door back there, okay? And Jackson, yes, Jackson, we do go out with real people, okay? It is good to know that we still do that. So, John, he would buy you books every now and then. Was there a method to the books he bought you, or just random books that he just picked up to read?
Yeah, I guess random books. Like I said, treasuries. I think most of the treasuries I have, I got from him. Years ago, on one of my my first show about comics my mom let me keep, were a series of Flash comic books. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to show them on some shorts now. I'm going back and pulling them out. Ooh. And of course, the Flash of Two Worlds, where they first made the Earth 2 thing, and the Flash of Earth 2 came in and so forth. I had mentioned that I think this belonged to a buddy of mine, but I don't know who it was. Maybe I bought it, but I got it now. So he writes to me, he goes, "You SOB, I gave you that book." I said, "Okay. I know you gave me a lot of them. I didn't keep tabs on it, Yeah. But yeah, it was random. I think he just still enjoyed them, whereas I was kind of toning down from it. And so he would just give them to me, and I wouldn't throw them out, being a hoarder and having already thrown out over half of my comic books. I would hold on to them.
Mark just made it cool for us to call ourselves hoarders. Okay. So I'm crediting Mark Andrews for that.
Okay.
Oh, good. Thanks, Matt. That's good.
Sure.
That's good.
So, Mark,
yes.
I'm assuming at some point you had a pause.
Oh yeah,
and
more than one.
Ooh, tell us how and why.
Well, it's just like Joe. Like life happens. Like you get a career, and you're like in my career, we moved 5 or 6 times. And when you move, like it's really interesting because like the company would move you, and they would list everything they were moving, and like you can only call like stacks and stacks of comics like a dresser so many times before they start to catch on. So I couldn't keep collecting that way. And also some of the places that we ended up living, there was no place to buy a comic book. Like the only time I would run into a comic book was, well, thank you, Stephanie, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Everyone in the chat, nobody is complimenting us like that. Okay? Way to go, Steph.
Anyway.
Much appreciated.
I'll try to get back on topic here. So
a little flustered there, Mark.
Yeah, I'm blushing. It's contrasting to the white hair. So yeah, you took a pause, and I I dabble in antiques too. I buy antiques and I go to yard sales and I go to auctions, and every once in a while there'd be a box of comics there, and I'd grab them and sort through, and there'd be some that were really quite, in my wheelhouse, and others that not so much. And I'd either, sell those or give them away or take them to the library or something. And you just had to pause. Like, life didn't let you do what you were doing when you were a kid. Like, we had responsibilities. I mean, Joe, became like a huge success in Manhattan, and he won't tell us all about that. But anyway, like, and there.
But I was a school teacher for 9 years.
Yeah.
In the Bronx and in Queens,
cool.
Dealing with some nice kids and some bratty kids, So took a lot of effort. And then every Friday night I had to go out and drink it all down.
Drink it away. Yeah. And, and then kids come along, and that actually is kind of cool, because when they started to get old enough to appreciate some of this stuff, I started pulling stuff out, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, you pause. Life, you have to weigh the value and the impact of the hobby on, okay, are we going to pay off the house, or am I going to buy more comic books? Right?
Give it to me.
That's always a hard one. Which one? Pay the bills or buy comics?
Yeah.
Stay still.
Give it to me.
We have a guest on the show, Joe.
We have a guest on the show who's being very camera shy, Joe.
Get on the camera. Here's my wife, Roseanne. Look over here. Okay.
Roseanne.
So she went to an estate sale, and I usually would go with her, but she goes, and I said, I'm not going to that thing. It's a waste of time. So she picked up a bunch of Life magazines there for like $1 a piece. So she comes upstairs to interrupt me now, because she says,
From the 70s.
Look what I found in the Life magazine.
Perfect.
It's in beautiful shape. It's obviously been in there for years.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, this is 75.
What a good find.
Well
1974.
done.
Yeah, it was inside here.
Well
so
done.
I'm going with her from now on, no matter how.
Well, that's my comic.
Now she says it's hers. She won't give it to me.
I'll sell it to you.
She'll sell it to me.
Don't give it to Joe. Sell
She
it.
did give it to me. You see that?
Oh,
That's
nice.
a good wife. So
Hey,
look,
Joe,
and
you
look
know
how
why
what
this
good
is
shape this is in.
similar to
It's
that.
beautiful.
It's nice. No
It's
spine
probably
ticks
like
on
at least
there.
a 92, 94. And the thing about it is, it was inside the Life magazine, so it was kept flat, protected.
That was its bag and board.
That was its bag and board. So look at that. Isn't that amazing?
Hey, Joe,
I always look in the books.
I have a story very similar to that story. That's how I got my Amazing Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah.
Now, my book was in between.
But that's not Amazing Spider-Man #1.
Oh.
It's still the Outlaw Kid, which is pretty dope. Okay. But that was awesome. So we got some more people. We got Kenneth Bird showing up. And ma'am, another name. I haven't seen you in a chat before. Great to see you. And Trev, no ASM1. Hey, Trev, give them time. They're going to keep looking for the Life magazines, okay?
Now, if she came in with ASM1, I'd settle for 2. I'd have to go out and buy her some fancy golden diamonds.
Oh, yeah. You'd be paying for that a long time.
For this, maybe some flowers will do. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know, Trev. Mine was in some pretty bad shape, okay? That Outlaw Kid looks amazing, okay?
Yep.
Where I actually clicked on the wrong one. But, so, I'm sorry. It was great seeing Mrs. Travato. Is that a first appearance? I feel like she's been
on my Christmas gift show.
That's right. I was like, I feel like I've seen she's been on before.
Yeah.
But not on my channel. So, hey.
It's
still
this was a first. This was breaking news on your channel.
Whoa, we are making headlines here, people. But another first-time viewer. Great to see you. Comics and Tortillas. First time watching a live. Great to see you. So we're going to go to Mark here. Mark, you came back from the comic books, okay, from your pause.
Yeah.
Wait, actually, I think you were the last one talking.
Yeah, so you should let Joe talk.
Yeah, with Joe. But anyhow.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Why did you come back after your pause?
I came back because of my sons.
Family
my sons. Yeah, so I have a lot of collectibles, and well, what they are collectibles now, but I had still a lot of my old toys and a bunch of that kind of stuff. And so I have like all my old GI Joes and Action Man and Best of the West and all those toys. And so I started putting those up on shelves around in the toy room. And I put some of my old comics up there, and the boys would get really interested about, you know, what are those and how old are those? And I would explain, well, if you look after your toys and definitely play with them, you know, you can keep some of them and then show your own kids. And then, you know, questions about, well, what comic is that? And as they got a little older, can I read that one? And, you know, you'd give them some of the reader copies and stuff. And then we got into the hobby and the TV shows, and I introduced them to the original Amazing Spider-Man cartoon, and, you know, all that stuff. And I literally, because of my two boys, I got really back into this hobby. And it was, and we do stuff still in it. And, you know, I have two nephews that are big time in it. Like my one nephew, he was at a nostalgia show today, and he's pulling up comics to his camera, his phone, and he's taking pictures. And do you want this one? Do you want that one? And there was a couple Conan books there, Matt, that I picked up. And
Yes.
And he said, well, no one else will buy these. And I said, I know a guy that I'll be talking to tonight that will want these really badly. Anyway, so that's what got me back into it. It was, you know, they say that your kids will keep you young, and that's it. That's, for me, that's how I got back into it.
Nice.
And it has really sped up with COVID in the last few years, because I really got to organize stuff that I hadn't organized in a long time. And but
organizing a collection, there's a joy to doing that. To see it go from disorganized to get it all put together. I've had to do that a handful of times so far. Yeah, between moving and whatever else. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And COVID did give us time to do that, didn't it?
Yep.
So Joe, what made you get back into it back in 2006?
6, 7, 8, whatever it was. I think I've told this story before, but I'm happy to repeat it here on the Matt Woods Comics channel.
Yes.
So I was involved with Boy Scouts.
Wait, time out. We got to do a dad joke, okay? You said something, okay? You said 6, 7, 8, but, you know, why is 5 afraid of 6?
Why?
Sorry, had to do it. Go ahead, 6, 7, 8. I threw him off.
No, you didn't throw me off. I'm trying to get information for you. So I was involved with the Boy Scouts, right? And so being involved with the Boy Scouts, you have to go ahead and you know, basically sometimes have to go to the Boy Scout shop and buy things, you know, depending on what they happen to be. And so there is a Boy Scout shop in the Empire State Building, all right?
Okay.
And the shop in the Empire State Building, oh, actually, it was 2006, okay? I got it straightened out for you. I just looked it up. So what I did was I went ahead and I went to this shop. And across the street was a comic book shop. So I went during my lunch hour in Manhattan. And so I said, oh, comic books, you know. I said, let me go in and see what's going on. And what I saw there was issue number 1 of All-Star Superman. And I said, oh, looked interesting. I pick it up, I flip through it, I look at some other comics, you know. And, you know, I said, oh, okay. And, you know, I had to get back to work. So I walked back down to our office and so forth. So I kept it in the back of my mind. The next time I went to the Empire State Building again, I made sure I had enough time. I went across the way and I bought the first couple of issues of All-Star Superman. And then I started looking around. Let's see, is there still Spider-Man? Is there still like Fantastic? You know, I just looked around a little bit. But I started buying All-Star Superman. And that really was the start, getting me back involved in buying. And that's a 12-issue series. You know, I talked about it in the last couple of comic book crowd shows that we had for different reasons.
Yeah.
But it was kind of my re-entry, because I was wondering, what was this All-Star thing? And I heard they had done an All-Star Batman, which I took a look at. But, you know, I was always a Superman fan, and that story was just so terrific. It just hooked me. I mean, I didn't know at the time that it's kind of almost like an Elseworld thing, you know, and the purpose of the All-Star line and all that. But the story was just so terrific. It was an adventure. It was emotional. At the end, the ending was so fantastic. I said, wow, if they're doing comics like this, maybe I should read some more. Right. So that was my re-entry into comic books.
Now, before we go too far, Trev wants to know, how big is your pull list?
Well, that's a good question, Trev. I have, the way I have it set up, I've got 2 short boxes right over there that have the tabs for all of my current titles. And when the tabs are full, because a lot of them are short series, then they go into the other boxes. But at last count, I think I'm currently reading about 27 different titles. Yeah, I know, Joe. It's the good thing is most of them
10 cents a comic anymore.
What's that?
They're not 10 cents a comic anymore.
No, they're not. But most of them are like 4 or 6 issue series. I still have a couple of long-term series, like Moon Knight and stuff like that. But some of them are short, and I quit. But my comic shop, so there's one here in North Bay called Dark Horse Comics, and Randy Reed, he's amazing, and he pulls books, and I have access to the Diamond catalog in advance to see what's coming and set stuff up.
Mark Big, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Wow.
And
the other guys I deal with are these guys out of Brantford, Capcom Comics online, and I go to their store when I'm down there, and which is a great service. And that's one of the things I think that has made it for the hobby is the ability to buy so many brand new books online, and to have pull lists in other locations that can be shipped to you safely and you know, and stuff. But yeah, it makes it like you run into stuff like, you know, like these, like Little Monsters and you know, like all kinds of like you know, Death Dealer and A&W, all these different publishers, different stories, completely
unless you see them.
Yeah, and you get a chance to see that new stuff out there. And some of them, Joe, is like what happened with you when you picked up that Superman book, was what's this? And you get drawn in, and it's I don't know, it's just such a cool way to get introduced to new writers, new artists, new ideas, and new stories, and it keeps the hobby really fresh. And I think Steve White said it best one day. He was talking about it being an addiction, and I love to read, and you just, you know, like not every book grabs you, not every new title grabs you. So some of those pull books, I may only get the first issue and go, yeah, this is not for me.
Yeah.
So
I've done that many times. But now Rudy has a question here, and I think I can answer for everyone here. Rudy, we have too many in our collection and not enough at the exact same time. Okay. I think that's a fair comic book collector, you know, statement there. Yeah, we all want more, but yeah, we all think we have too many. Okay. So anyhow, I'm going to get back here to Joe. We're going to make Joe big. Now, this is the crux of this show. This question right here. Okay. Yes, we all started getting into comics when we were a kid, okay? We had that realization that we were actual collectors, and then we became adults. and life, events took precedence over collecting, we all made our little comeback into the hobby. But listen, you're retired. You can buy these books, read them online, and sometimes at a fraction of the price. Why do you continue to collect comic books?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question because unlike Mark, two things happened.
Unlike
And
Mark, I love how this is starting.
I don't have a pull list anymore. Doesn't mean I don't buy comics now and then, but I do look for like short series, like Mark had indicated. Two things happened. Number one, the Justice League ended. They were all dead, or they weren't dead, or whatever else. And Spider-Man became unreadable for me. Those were the two comics that I was making sure I got every month and collecting. Unlike some other people that still collect and maybe don't read them, what I decided to do is to read them online.
Yes.
And so I do most of my reading online now. Like I said, I do buy some. If I hear a series is good, I might go ahead and pick up a series. I've gotten to know a particular writer and an artist from Italy. So I look for them. And if they are doing something that I'm aware of, I will pick it up, and sometimes, Instagram them notes and things about it and that type of stuff. So it becomes more personal for me with respect to that.
Okay.
And so I really don't have a pull list anymore. I will go into a comic book store. If I'm down in the city, I'll go into Midtown where I would buy them. My daughter, for Christmas, gave me a gift card for Midtown Comics, which I still haven't even. I was down there the other day and I did pick up a few books, but I haven't even used the gift card yet. So what's happened is I've just kind of said to myself, there were comic books that I wanted, right? Older comic books that fit into, remember, the name of my channel is Anachronic Comics. And anachronic means chronologically misplaced. So here I am, and I picked that purposely. So here I am, the old guy in this group, Mark, for sure, right? And here I am in 2023. But if you watch my channel, my head is in the 1960s and 1970s, with maybe a little bit of 50s, in there, and maybe an occasional 80s. So I'm I'm not in the right time frame. So I have shown some books that I have bought because I stopped spending money on 10, 15, 20 comics a month. And instead, I put that money towards books that I really want, whether it's raw or whether it's graded, that costs some cash. I don't have the freedom to be able to spend all this money. I just don't see it as being the right thing to do from a family perspective. Yeah. So I do save up. I have some stuff, and all this money that I would usually spend on new books, and like I said, some exceptions, I do buy some. I now look for a book and I say, I'm going to look for this particular book. I want to get this particular book, and I look for a good sale or something like that. And I have the money and I buy that book, and that makes me feel really good. Meanwhile, there's the new Superman, series that people are saying are really good. Some other ones like that. I just pull out my phone or my iPad or on the computer. I'll pull it up and I read them, and I think it's great. But if there's a cover I like, for example, still kind of a cover person. If there's a super cover, I look at it, say, that cover is really cool. I might go and pick up that book because of the cover, not because of the story. So my whole collecting is very, very different than it was. And for some covers, like the new Spider-Man covers that have come out, I really had to step back because of the addiction, Mark. Stepping back and say, you know what? I've fallen into this rabbit hole before.
Yeah.
Where I've spent money to get like a 9.8 of this really good looking cover, or spend $30 or $40 or $50 for a raw copy of this really good cover There might be a 1 in whatever. And I had to step back and say, you know what? I'm not doing that this time.
Yeah.
You know, I'll
Yeah,
be able to
that's-
get it at
that-
some other point in time.
Yep.
You know, and if it ends up being something that costs like $1,000, all right, I don't got it, but I
Nope.
don't care. You know, I'll get something else that I want. So that's
that
my
whole
collecting
thing.
has changed.
That whole thing with the variant covers, that rabbit hole, I try to stay away from because it's crazy
And
how
I fell
many
right
different
into it at
covers.
one point in
And
time.
unless, well, it's easy to, Joe. It's so easy to because of
No,
the
me-
of the. It's so easy to fall into that rabbit hole of variant
tie-ins.
covers.
And the time.
Yeah, it's. But if there's an artist, I'm like you. If there's, I'm not reading that series, but I really like that artist's work. I like that cover, but then I have to sit back and go, okay, I like it. It's really cool. Do I need it? I'm not, so some of these series that I buy are only like 1 shots or 2 shots or 4 comics. And some of the smaller press houses, they'll do 20 plus variant covers for issue number 1. And no, I'll get issue number 1. I may get a variant of issue number 1 and not buy the A cover.
Right. I'll do the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because if you don't, like, you're talking huge coin. Like, some of them just, like, I see a brand new book that's $800 for a book that was published yesterday. And it's like, okay, there's some classic silver and gold age books that aren't that much.
Yeah.
That if I find, I'll spend that kind of money on that maybe, but not.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, Matt, one thing, I see Comics and Tortillas. You have that
Yeah,
up there.
I'm
Do you
gonna
feel you're missing
ask
out on
you this
characters you love on where they were now since 20 years ago? I have 2 things to say. When I got back into it, I tried to pick up Fantastic Four, Avengers, and X-Men along with Spider-Man because those are the ones that I collected as a kid. I didn't like them. I didn't understand what was going on except for Spider-Man. I thought that was good, so I continued to read Spider-Man. But I'll tell you right now, I am actually, it's so interesting. I had the same idea. And so I'm actually doing a little bit of research for a video on my channel where I'm going to be saying, basically, these superheroes, where are they today? What happened to them and stuff like that. And so it's just amazing when you said that. I said, shoot, I just thought about that last week. And I'm just starting to write some stuff and looking online and trying to find some stuff to make an interesting video about it. So I'm not sure when I'm going to get it done, but that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, what has happened to these people, and is it good? Is it bad, or what have you? So be on the lookout for it. I don't know when, but be on the lookout for it and you'll get my answer.
Comics and Tortilla, that was a great question. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, you already started getting into it, of why you are staying in a comic book collection, but continue on.
Well, because of the new stuff, but also because now I'm like Joe, I'm retired, kind of. Like, we still have side gigs and stuff that I do, and that's where I get the mad money to still do some of this in the hobby. But there's books now that when I was a younger collector and I actually had a lot more responsibilities and that whole thing of family and all that stuff, that I wouldn't even think about looking for. But there's books now that I will take a gamble on and just go, what's that? So like this one, for example, okay, this is a science fiction magazine that was in a dollar bin at Dark Horse Comics this week. Okay. So this was in 1993 and I went, what's that? But back when I was like very specific into collecting, I'm collecting Spider-Man, I'm collecting, Team Up, I'm collecting this and this. I wouldn't even looked at that book. So I picked it up for $1. And then I find out that it's a Michael Kaluta cover. It's the magazine had 2 issues and it failed miserably. But then the original art for this book that was commissioned for this book sold at Heritage Auctions for $2,800 US.
Ooh.
So I went, okay, so if the original art for this by Michael Kaluta sold for that and collectors are interested in his work, maybe this will be something. So, that's, I do stuff like that. Like I picked this one up just the other day and all that is the cover. That's it. There's no book in here. This is just the cover. So now as a collector, I'm going, okay, can I find, like, from, this is 1947. Can I find a really beat up cover book of The Shadow so that I can marry a really good cover with a really beat up gut? And, and I know that's, oh my God, that it's not attached, and you're marrying books, and it would never be graded, and I wouldn't anyway. But as a collector, to have that ability to still go into shops and still go looking, and, it's that hunt and all that kind of stuff. And that's why now that I'm where I am in my life, I can play a lot more at this, and it's not serious. Like, I have no intention of ever buying an AF, Amazing Fantasy 15. I'm not going to tie up family funds in that book, but I'll buy this.
Captain 3D. Does it come with the glasses?
You betcha.
Yes.
And this is Joe Simon and Jack Kirby.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but when I was, a serious collector, and I was filling in holes, and I was, I had to get every book of this and all that stuff. I wouldn't have picked that up. But now, making this hobby fun again is, for me, that's where I'm at, and that's why I still do it, because that's hysterical. Captain 3D. Lo and behold, there was one issue of this.
I never heard of it before. I can see why.
But come on, it's Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Right. So how can you say no to Jack Kirby?
Now, I'm seeing a common theme between you two guys. And as we're talking, and I put myself big, and I really shouldn't, but as you guys were talking about why you are still collecting, I'm seeing smiles on your face. I'm seeing your eyes light up. I'm seeing a legit, pleasure and, happiness that you gain from this hobby. In a nutshell, is that the reason you continue to collect?
I just love the books that Mark shows.
Yes, you too.
Yes.
3D.
Because if I would come across that, dollar bill or not, whatever like that, I would probably pick that 3D book up, because I have picked up others, and I have a slew of 3D. Actually, where was I? I went into a shop, and the guy had like a package of the 3D viewers. So I got about 10 of them. I said, yeah, how much you want? I'll take $1. I said, I'll take them,
Yeah.
Because some of them you get don't have the 3D viewer on them. So that way I've got the 3D viewers for them. So, and I do remember, Mark, when you brought that up, I was looking to myself, probably the oldest comic I owned was one that I got from that guy. So it was obviously not in 1959, but it was a 1959 Superman comic book that was in 3D with no cover, because it was in that bookstore, and he had books he would give away, no cover, things like that. He wouldn't sell them for 5 cents. He would give them. So I got that one from him. It was in 1959, and it was in 3D, with the red and the blue.
Yep.
I didn't have the glasses at that time, but eventually I managed to get the glasses. Unfortunately, I don't have that comic, so it must have been one of the ones I didn't keep for whatever reason. But when I saw that, all that kind of came back to me. And a lot of the collecting now, and that's why I'm focusing in on comic books that I would like to have, is just like a lot of guys I hear here. Well, I was in the 90s and I watched the TV shows, and it's more of my childhood. Well, for me, my childhood is like 60s, basically. Yeah. And so when I see that, I immediately go back to that. I said, shoot, I remember having that 1959 Superman 3D. I wish I still had that book. And it brings a smile to my face, because that was kind of my time. And I look at it, I showed that I was a member of the Merry Marvel Marching Society, and Mark was so nice to send me that. What was it, Mark? It was a Two Gun Kid or something?
Yep.
That had my name in it as being a Merry Marvel Marching Society member. I was going to buy one, and he said, don't do anything. When you get back to New York, you'll see something. I knew that's what he was going to do, and that was such a fantastic thing to do. And, being a member, being there, I felt so fortunate to be there at the beginning of all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just so great. And so when things happen now, that's why I was so disappointed when I looked at the Avengers and X-Men. I didn't like it. I didn't understand it. It just didn't make any sense to me, because what I had during my childhood and the stuff that was happening there in the first like 40, 50 issues of all of those things, to me was just amazing. And if I see something that reminds me of that, in some way, that to me is heaven. It's great.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
makes me happy. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. And even on my channel, I go through the history and stuff, because I've learned stuff I didn't even know when I was a kid. But
Yeah.
I researched and I said, oh, wow, that's why this happened here. That's why this is all around. This is what was going on. Oh, here's who the artist was, I mean,
Yeah.
besides Carmine Infantino and Curtis Swan, I didn't know any other artists. But then I got to know about Murphy Anderson. Obviously, I knew about Kirby and
Yeah.
Ditko, Gil Kane. I ended up, I can spot his artwork, and most people can, from far away. All those people, Neil Adams, I got to speak to him so many times. I was so happy about that, and so to me, that's really where the collecting comes into play.
Yes.
It's things that make you feel good, remind you of your childhood potentially, and good things about your childhood, and also getting to know some of the people, alive or past, because you could read about them, that gave you all that joy, and to me, that's where I am right now.
That's it makes you, that's why I like some of the Gold Key and some of the old Dell and the cartoon books and the movie books and like trying to find some of those, like Matt, you asked me about Flipper when I was talking to you, and it's right up over there, like that childhood stuff that I couldn't afford and I didn't have the chance to. And as Joe says, and he said it so well, like, come on, when I was first buying books and collected books, I didn't know who the artists were. Like, and you get educated and you go, oh, that's why that is like that. And that's what makes this hobby, it makes me smile. And also, I'll be honest, like this hobby has people like you two in it, and like all the people in the chat. And it's that sharing stories and just, and and laughing about stuff, and it makes you smile. And those endorphins, like, what a great hobby that this is, that allows you to have a lot of fun. Like I was wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt the other day getting groceries, and the cashier, like, she looks at me, she goes, "That's a great t-shirt." And I said, "Yeah, we're from the same year." And he looked at me and he went,
1962.
"It's 1962. I said, "It was a great year." And he went, "Oh, that's really cool." Like he didn't realize that.
Didn't realize it.
And I don't know. That's why I still love this hobby. And
I'm looking. See, Gil Kane. There's some comments about Gil Kane. For years, I associated Gil Kane with the Green Lantern. That was it. And when I found out that he did other things, like an Avengers cover with Hercules on and stuff like that, I was like, oh, he did other stuff. Because when I was a kid, it was like Gil Kane, Green Lantern, Carmine Infantino, Kurt Swan, Superman, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. So, Kirby, Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men. I mean, to me, that's the artists that I knew and how I connected them to different things. And just then, now being an adult and going through this stuff for the last, 2006. So I've been, in the hobby now for about 16, 17 years, right? I mean, I've learned so much more about these artists, about what they did, the expansive part about it. And so for me now, this kind of second part is also not so much about collecting, although I do, but it's more about learning and understanding more about it and seeing how they went out. I learned so much more about Stan Lee now. It's about what he talked about and so forth, and what he thought. I've got books on him now that I mean, right here, there's a whole ton of books back here. You see the books that I bought, that I buy. I got another in my downstairs. I have a small kind of library area, and I got another ton of books down there, all about comic book creation, these people that created them, stories about them, stories about the characters. I just love that stuff,
and that's
so
I do
that's
too,
really
Joe.
where most of my energy goes nowadays. Some new stuff, yeah. Some of it's really good. And when I hear about it, I either read it online or maybe I'll go out and actually buy the comic book, you know. But more of it is just understanding it and seeing it for the cultural phenomenon that it has been, you know, with some downturns, you know,
Yep.
Yeah.
but a lot of stuff that is so significant in my life and in the life of a lot of other people that are in the chat and even here, you know, on the Matt Woods Comics channel.
Oh, jeez. But hey, you know, you guys talking about a lot, but you know, the comic or the hobby is changing, and Comics and Tortilla has a legit question. How do you feel about reading comics off tablets? And I was talking, this is how I read 90% of my books. I'll still pull out the floppy every now and then. But is this still, you know, part of the hobby? And do you mind people doing this?
Well, I mentioned that basically for most of the new comics, with some rare exceptions, and those exceptions are mostly maybe like, you know, indies and that type of stuff. I read them all off the tablet. I'll even read them if I'm laying down in bed before I go to bed. I'll read them off my phone if my tablet's nowhere there and I don't want to get out of bed. I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll just make them bigger, you know, with my fingers and read through it. And that's how I read my comics. Probably, I don't know what you said. Did you say 90%?
About
Mine
90.
is maybe 95.
Okay.
And I'm completely opposite. And
You're
it's
floppy.
and it's absolutely nothing at all wrong with doing it the other way. And I don't think that diminishes anybody who's a collector. Like, because Joe reads a lot of books online, that doesn't diminish he's a collector. He's knowledgeable and he understands it and he's staying current. I think that's the reason that I still buy the hard copies is, well, there's a couple of reasons. And to be honest with, I come from a small town. I have seen a lot of businesses come and go. I've seen a lot of LCSs come and go over the years and where I've been. And my LCS, my local one, they look after me and I like buying from him. I don't know if my pull list will stay as big as it is when forever. It won't. But also if Randy decided tomorrow that, you know, he's been running that shop for his whole life, if he decides for whatever reason that he has to pack it in, will my pull list be the same? No, because my loyalty is really to him as being part of that community of that LCS and going in there and shooting the breeze and seeing the characters. Though I think some people come to see me because they consider me a character, which is really unfair. But, you know, so I've not made that transition, and I may make that transition to reading them online. I've dabbled in it a little bit, and I've looked at the platforms, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I just haven't got there yet.
Yeah. Now, I did have to make a comment here. Jackson, you know, we were talking about Gil Kane. Psychedelic Comics brought him up. You know, that's what he identifies with or relates with. Yeah, Gil Kane did some Conan covers. They were some of my least favorite. It just, I don't know. It just didn't look very good. Not like Barry Windsor Smith or John Buscema. So, guys, this has been a great conversation. Are you guys willing for one more round of questions?
So it's your show, Matt.
Well, you guys are the guests. So you do have
Sure.
to
You know,
say,
Matt, we're just bringing up the quality. We're bringing up the quality of your channel so much. You know,
Well,
I
the
understand why you
truth
want
is-
us to stick around a little bit longer now. You know,
Steve White made a comment here. You know, great guest tonight. Okay, and he's telling me the truth. Okay, although Steve is the voice, but you guys are just one statement's leading to more questions. And what is your future with this hobby? What do you see going forward? We'll start out with Joe.
Yep.
well, I kind of said it already. I mean,
You kind of did, but
I think
again,
for me, I'm just going to be reading less new stuff. Being connected with all of you out there, you do hear about good things, and that's helpful to me because then it enables me to kind of take a look at it, you know. And if I'm not subscribed to a particular outlet, to be able to read it online, I will go to the store, and look for it, or online, and look for the book. And like you said, Mark, I would normally pick up the first few and see if it grabs me or not. So I do see myself doing that, but I see myself as reading fewer and fewer new books. Not because they're not all good, but I just think there is a lot of, can I say the word crap? Maybe not. So let me think of another
Absolutely.
word.
Less than
So
stellar.
there's a lot of it out there that is not very good. And over the last, especially over the last 3-4 years, I was buying books that I at one time were good and they weren't very good anymore. And I kept buying them. And I'm saying, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
When I was doing the completest thing, I would buy everything to make sure that I had the whole thing, which made no sense. If I was buying even a limited series and I happened to miss one, I would pay whatever I had to pay to get the one that I was missing so that I can get it there. And as I stepped back, I said to myself, once I've read it and everything, okay, big deal. It was like, it might have been good, but it's not like it's, ASM number 1.5, I mean, it's nothing like that. So my realization was, and this goes back maybe a year now, my realization was that I to enjoy the hobby, I don't have to buy all these books, just me, I could read as many as I'd like to read online, buy a few of them. When I went to the New York Comic Con, I did buy some books to fill in some of my older runs that I had. And I did buy a couple of beautiful covers, some Spider-Man covers and things like that by like Carnivore Comics and some of the others. There was another one I wanted to get, but I didn't get it. Got sold out before I got to it. Brian LCS got the last one, I think. So, I mean, so I will do that. And that's part of the collecting for me. And I will be looking, at older books when I go to some of the places to see if there's stuff that I like or that I might want to pick out. But I don't feel that need anymore to go and make sure I have a pull list, get those books every week, read them and all that. I just don't have that in me anymore. So I'll read online what I want to read online. I'll buy some floppies, if I think it's worthwhile, or if I like the cover. And so for me, that's, at least right now, until I decide that I don't want to do any of this anymore, that's my future, is looking into the past. Remember, anachronic, chronologically misplaced. I'll look into my sweet spot for my collecting, and I'll do some reading, for the new one. I'm not looking to get the next book that's going to be hot, Yeah. And I think Mark said something, that resonated with me. People say, well, do you spec? I said, no, I'm an accidental speculator. All right. What does that mean? That means I bought these comics because I wanted to sometime in the past. And now suddenly I found out, oh, this is Spider-Gwen's first appearance. When I bought it, I wasn't buying it for that. I bought it because I was reading the Spider-Man stories. And I said, oh, that's good. I'll have Humberto Ramos sign it at New York Comic Con. And it ended up a 9.8, and I got that, and it's probably worth some money. But that's not the reason I bought it. It's just accidental. It's the way I look at it. So that's kind of, as best as I can put it, where I see my comic collecting is now, and at least in the near future.
Yeah, have a good night, Steve.
Night, Steve.
Hey, and there's nothing wrong with trying to get the new thing that's coming out. I did end up picking up one of these. Let me make myself big. In the same week, I picked up this thing, and honestly, I could care less about, quote, Spider-Boy, who's the latest FOMO thing. But I saw it whenever I was at a comic book show with Milt, who, Flowers Comics. But the same week, I ended up picking up this stunner, and so there's nothing wrong with being able to do a little bit of both every now and then. It does make it hard if that's all you're doing. Because
Matt, the thing is, it's all a crapshoot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to go
Completely.
back to like, Superman 75 and all that, because that's kind of the one that everybody brings up, but it's all a crapshoot. So to
Yeah.
me, I'm better off. I feel better just being an accidental
Yep.
speculator. I mean, right now, I got on the next espresso mail call thing, I've got some stuff back from CGC, some good, some not so good. But one of them is a book that I showed off before in the Raw. I thought it was in decent shape, and I sent it out. And you'll love this story. So I'm in Florida, right? CGC sends it to New York. And I recognize now that this book that might have been worth a few $100s raw, now slabbed a 6.5, is probably worth in the thousands of dollars.
Whew.
And I'm not here to pick it up. And so I start, my neighbor has COVID. I can't go out. So I call up this guy that I knew that in Boy Scouts, and we very friendly, and he ends up he works at a high school near me, and so I write to him. I said, hey, can you go pick this thing up? Maybe. So he says, yeah. So he picks it up that morning. So he's holding it now for months in his house, and I just went to pick it up. We got back about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So the minute I get back, I write to him, or I call him up and I say, hey, can I come over and pick up the thing? He goes, yeah, come to the school, right? Come to the office. I'm in this office here and all that. So I go to the school, and he gives me, and we talk about some other things, and stuff like that. I said, just thanks a lot for picking this thing up. I said, this book is worth probably around $3,000, and it's George. But that was, again, I bought it as a kid, right?
Yep.
And so I'm looking at some others now, because I have a lot of them that are probably worth a lot more money. I just can't afford to get them, to get them all, graded and slabbed.
Yeah,
but I'm
send them
looking
all
at some
down there.
others that might be accidental ones that I bought since 2006, and I'll do one or two maybe of the old ones, but I'm looking at some of these others and saying,
Yep.
This might be okay, and looking to say, put them in because they're quote unquote modern books.
Yeah.
They cost less. They're in decent shape. They might even be I've gotten a few 9/8s from them, because I keep them now bagged and boarded in boxes and all that, as opposed to the 1960s. So to me, that's what I'm going to do. If I go out and try, I've done that before. I bought some comics. I think this is going to be worth some money. It's worth crap. And I might have bought it even for a lot more money than
it's worth now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said to myself, I'm not doing that anymore. Not saying it's bad to do it. God bless you. Hope it works out for you. But for me, I'm done.
Not worth it. See, I'll do it for a few bucks. I won't do it for a lot of bucks. But so, Mark, we're going to end this show here with you telling us, what do you see your future? Hobby.
My future in the hobby is similar to Joe. Like, as I said before, like I kind of said it, my large pull list and stuff will slowly drop because, I'm reading some stuff that's really good and there's other stuff that is horrible and I don't read it and I stop reading it. But from moving forward, I'm really fortunate that both of my sons are into the hobby and they're going to inherit this. I have two nephews who are both into the hobby, and I get to kibitz with them and I get to talk about books and go on shopping trips with them and that kind of stuff. So as I get moving forward, I see myself slowly easing back. I'm an accidental, just like Joe. Like there's books that I bought as a kid or as a young adult that now are worth huge coin. And I didn't buy it because I thought it was going to be worth anything. I just bought it, right? Because I wanted to read that story. And there's some books that I like the art, but I don't think this book is going to be worth a fortune because of. I don't do that. I do know that this collection, when you appraise it, is crazy, and it's going to be, inherited, and what the boys decide to do with it, the boys decide to do with it. And
so remember, when they get inherited, the basis price goes up to what it's worth on that day.
I know.
So if they sell it, they won't have to pay any capital gains or very little.
Well, I have one.
It's not
Joe.
giving tax advice, people.
Yeah,
That is good advice, Joe.
Good advice, Joe. I've got one son.
It's not advice.
It is what it is. So we'll see. But I think a lot of people are saying the comic book, hobby is going to be dead in 20 years because of tablets and everything's going to crash and burn. Well, they've been saying that about everything for years. So, like all these artists are leaving and they're setting their own companies up. Well, I just showed you a book that Jack Kirby did that had nothing to do with any other, like it was Harvey. It wasn't Marvel, it wasn't DC. And those guys, like they bounce all over. There's going to be new stories. There's going to be new publishers. There's going to be new ways to read books. There's going to be new way to collect this stuff. If you do, there's going to be people looking for some of these books that Joe and I have that we bought as kids because there's not as many and they're beat to death. I think the hobby's got a lot of a future to it. And I'm glad that I'm able to share it with my kids, my nephews, and anybody who's
and with us.
Yeah, and with everybody who's willing to listen to me ramble on about it. So that's where we're at for me.
You and me both, Mark.
Yeah.
Guys, this has been an absolutely wonderful show. I've really enjoyed, listening to Matt from Comics of the Bay. He says he's been listening the whole time and just been fun to listen to you guys, but he's part of the younger crowd. At least he says he is. I don't know if that's true, Matt, but he just loves the perspective. And guys, I got to give a giant shout out to Dave. Dave is organizing his man cave, was listening the whole time, and I just haven't been able to get to and acknowledge his comments, which are amazing. And he's talking about the subpar stuff being published, but thank you, Dave, so much. In fact, everybody who's been out there, thank you so much. But Joe, can you tell us what you have coming up?
Yeah, I just posted episode 16 of the Comics My Mom Let Me Keep, which was my Avengers books that I bought for 2 cents back in 1965.
Are they single-digit Avenger books?
Yeah, they're single digits up to numbers 2 through 12, I think it was, or 11, something like that. This coming week, I'm going to have part 2 of that, which are the rest of the books through, I think, up in the 50s, if I remember correctly, which I bought, unfortunately, for 12 cents each. I had to spend a lot of money on those. Thereafter, I think we're going to have another anachronic theater presentation of one of the Superman animated shorts from 1943 this time. And following that, I've got something I've been working on. I've got to finish it up. That's going to be basically a superhero movie related. So I'll hold off on that because I'm kind of working on that. It's going to be kind of a fun look-see at some of the movies that have come out, since, I guess, Superman, whatever. Yeah. So we're going to take a look at that with a certain perspective, I think. It's going to be kind of fun.
So, Mark, do you have anything coming up? Any shows you're going to be on?
Maybe.
If you're allowed to tell us, I'm not sure.
Well, I
don't give it away, Mark.
I'm not saying nothing. You just said something. I might be doing something with him.
Nice.
But no, I just occasionally, because you guys need somebody to fill the space in one of these blocks up here in your shows, I get asked to come on, and I always am very flattered and appreciate the chance to show off some books and collaborate with incredible collectors like you guys and the people in the chat. So who knows where I may pop up, but I'm just kind of around.
Mark, I'm gonna agree with Jackson Roy Kirk. Yeah,
that's pretty hard.
Let me tell Jackson. Let me make a slight announcement that Milt, and I told you this already, Matt. Milt, Mark, and Milt is, I don't know, how old is Milt? He's around our age anyway.
He's around our age.
Yeah. Way, you know how old he is.
Yeah.
But he just had a birthday last week.
Right. So we are actually working on potentially a series of shows that's going to be very much like this, where we're going to be delving into the old guys and what the old guys remember and think about. So it'll be much more grandiose than it actually was,
Yes.
But you guys won't know because you weren't even born. We're going to be there, and we'll just lie through our teeth and make it look so fantastic that these shows are going to be shows that people are going to want to watch. So be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for it.
I cannot wait for that. But I just want to tell Comics and Tortilla, absolutely, plug away. And Jackson Roy Kirk puts it best here. Mark, you're not just filling a panel. You have so much knowledge. You're such a good human being. We love having you on the show. So, yes, you're not just filling up a panel. But
you're way too kind. Way too kind, Matt.
Wait till we go off and we're backstage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But guys, I want to thank everybody for watching. And this is a great place to end the show. See you guys next week.